this is like my time of the week when I can just be completely just free in whatever I speak about. I don't always have a guest. Sometimes it's just me. Like this week, it's just me. And that's what I want this week. And I'm fine with it. I'm fine sometimes just having a solo show because I can just talk about the things that just are relevant to me at the time. I am currently recording this a little later. This is coming out a little later if you didn't realize. It's still Wednesday, but it's just coming out in the evening time, my time, because I'm in the middle of it at a time of recording of just setting up my new setup. I've got a new gaming PC. I've got new monitors. I've got a new television. I've got a new car. I've just treating myself like crazy. But hey, I'm my bank account hates me right now, but I'm loving it right now. So I am just treating myself and just kind of living my best life at this point, which is fine. Sometimes you do that. And how this show is. This show could be an hour long. This show could be 20 minutes long. I don't really know, but that's the kind of beauty of this show. My Wednesday show, the Josh Robinson show, is just completely and utterly off the cuff. And that's what I kind of like about this show. So yes, I am in the middle of a new setup and setting up everything and kind of getting adjusted to new stuff and not realizing how much I actually had set up over time on my old computer and being like, whoa, how do I set up this again? How do I kind of start fresh again? Which is, it's not the worst, but it's a lot. It's just a lot. It's a good problem to have, I guess. But welcome, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day quarantining away. Or if you're not in quarantine anymore, I'm not really sure. I said on Dits vs. Josh this week that we're kind of in the process of this state in Australia is kind of in the process of easing restrictions and stuff like that. So we're kind of in the zone of a new normal somewhat. I'm not really sure exactly how to describe it, where we're just in the process of things changing, which is good. But it's such a weird time because you're like, you don't want to be too far ahead of the curve and then shit is just crazy. You don't want to be completely behind and you're restricting for no reason. I don't know, social distancing is still in place and everything like that, but pubs and cafes and restaurants and small businesses are slowly starting to open up again. More will come next week. So who knows? I'm cautiously optimistic about it all. Just because, again, you don't want to go too early and it's still like, oh man, do I want to see human beings? Do I not want to see human beings? I'm not really sure, but I'm sure it will be fine and we'll all get there and whatever. So it's a process though for everybody. Everyone is kind of adjusting to this differently. I guess it's just the way I'm adjusting to it, but it is a process. What I want to talk about today though, you see in the title of this episode, you see my little this week on at the start of the week, and something that I talk about a lot is music, and in particular two very important bands to me, one being Hands Like Houses and the other being Paramore. Paramore have been with me since I was a teenager, and I feel like their music has grown up as well as I've grown up. So I just have that kind of connection to Paramore's music, and Hands Like Houses is something I've discovered in the last year that I've just completely fallen in love with, and they're just my two favorite bands. I flip-flop every single day on which one I like more, but I've just come to the agreement that I just like them equally for different reasons. And I'll have an episode that I'm going to dedicate to Hands Like Houses at some stage when I'm just like, I need an episode and this will be it. But today I want to talk about Paramore and just the impact they've had on me and just why I love Paramore and what it is about Paramore that I just cannot get enough of. It's like, you know how when you discover I love discovering new music. I think it's one of my favorite things is just discovering a band or an artist and just going, oh, what's this about? I want to know more about this, and I want to kind of dig deep into their arsenal, into their library, and just kind of go through and discover it in your own way, or if it's something new and it's just freshly come out, just going on that journey. Now, I'll take you back. So, I didn't capture Paramore until I think a lot of people captured Paramore, and that was, of course, Misery Business. When that song came out, I was, 12, maybe 11, 12 years old, and I'm just like, what is this? There was always something I was drawn to, because as a kid, I think a lot of us, not all of us, but at least for me, I listened to a lot, whatever was on the radio, whatever was top 40 pop music. That's just what I did I won't just say pop music. Everyone knows how I am with music. I don't really see genre, I just see good music and bad music. But top 40 mainstream music is what I was listening to. Whatever's on the radio, whatever was on the music channels, that was just kind of what I was into. In that time span, 2005, 2006 would have been a lot of Beyonce, Fergie, Gwen Stefani would have been pretty big at that point. Kelly Clarkson. It would have been a lot of those kind of artists. Britney Spears. Like, that's just what I kind of grew up with in my era. The early 2000s to mid 2000s was my, like, core time to be a child listening to music. So, going into 2006, and my brother was always really into, like, he just listened to rock music. That's just what he was doing. My brother is 7 years older than me, so he was well into his teens, and that was what he was listening to. And he knew that he wanted to get me into different music. He didn't want me just listening to just the cliche, whatever's on the radio kind of deal. I understand that. So what his kind of mindset was, I think, was Paramore was still, it was different to what I was listening to, but also it was still what's the word I'm looking for? It was still close enough to what I was listening to, in the sense of, like, it's not just like you're going from Beyonce to listening to, like, heavy metal. Like, it wasn't necessarily that. It was still that kind of pop punk, pop rock kind of deal. So I think it was just like this bridge, and he thought, maybe I can get Josh into some other stuff. And I remember going, I like this. And there's something about female-led bands that at that stage, it was, even still to a certain degree, it's kind of foreign. It's kind of different. And it was very different at the time, and I was just like, I really dig this. And then you just kind of start slowly diving into library. I was 11, so I'm getting pretty impressionable at this age. So I discovered Misery Business, and then Riot was the album at the time, their second album. And I was like, I dig this highly, 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 highly. So 2006, 2007. So 11, 12, 13, that age was when I'm kind of around and getting into Paramore. And then I go back to All We Know Is Falling, which is their debut album. And you kind of just go through and you're like, oh man, this is really cool. So by 2009, when Brand New Eyes came out, their third album, it was pretty adamant. I was really digging Paramore. I was really into Paramore, and it was just what I was like, okay, I've listened to their first two albums and I'm really into this. And now Brand New Eyes is coming out, and that had songs like Brick by Boring Brick and The Only Exception and Ignorance, and the list goes on and on and on. Decode come out just before that, and it was, of course, the song for Twilight, and that's very 2008 of me to say, and it was huge. Decode took them to another level. I still say that to this day, is that someone who knows Paramore as much as I do and has studied Paramore and listened to Paramore as much as I have, Decode is one of their just best songs, purely from a music standpoint, is one of their best songs. And it was huge. Twilight was everywhere at that point, so you could just imagine the sheer volume that this song got out to people. And it was just a very great song. So I think in between Riot and Brand New Eyes, yes, Decode came out, and then Brand New Eyes, and that was a brilliant album. And then they went through all that change with the band members and kind of had to take a little bit of a step back. They took 4 years to write Paramore, their self-titled album. And dude, I just can't get over how much I love Paramore. The self-titled album is their greatest album from top to bottom. It has the best songs. It has the best structure of an album. It has interludes. I think it was just their musical peak. And it's just something that I just genuinely am in love with. I still go back and listen to the self-titled album on a regular basis. Last Hope from that album is my favorite song ever. Not just Paramore. I mean, it's my favorite song ever. It has Last Hope, and it has Part 2, and it has Ain't It Fun, it has Now, it has Daydream, and there's just so many things I love about that album that I will always love, and I just am very, very into that album, and just very into how good, and especially at that time, so what, 2013, I believe, so what am I this year, 25, damn, 17, I can't count. What am I thinking? 2013, 17 years old, 16 years old, 18 years old, something like that. I was very much finding out who I was as a person, so music is very influential to you at that age. So that came out at a perfect time, and I feel like, from Brand New Eyes to Paramore, they evolved, and they were becoming this alternative, they weren't a genre to me anymore. This is when I really discovered that I wasn't really, I like pop music, I like rock. I was just like, I just like what I like. I like music, and that's plain and simple. That's what I'm into. And Paramore is the perfect kind of example of me with music, is that it has a little bit of everything, and it doesn't really fit into a bubble, genre-wise. And that's there's some stuff on there that's like really heavy, and there's some stuff on there that's pretty mainstream, kind of quote-unquote poppy. It's a masterpiece of an album from top to bottom. It is my favorite album of all time. It's obviously my favorite Paramore record of all time. It's just, if anyone ever asks me what my favorite album is ever, I say Paramore. Paramore is their self-titled album. Paramore is my favorite record of theirs. And then, I mean, there was a little bit of a break in between Paramore and then what was to come. And I just remember sitting down, and I got tagged, it comes up on Facebook. This person mentioned you in a comment. It comes all back to my brother here. It says Dylan Robinson mentioned you in a comment. And I was like, what? It said Paramore is releasing new music, and it's supposedly coming in the next few days. And I was like, oh, I don't know. It wasn't from like an official website. They weren't saying they are, and then all of a sudden, the next day, boom, Hard Times comes out, and it is so different to anything Paramore have ever done. They announced After Laughter, which was their 2017 record, and it is, it's obviously very different, and a lot of people weren't for it, a lot of people were. I was completely for it, because you never want to do the same thing over and over again, and Paramore could have just rested on their laurels and just did another album. Of course, they had more band member changes and whatever, did another album and been fine, but they took a risk, and it paid off. I love After Laughter. It's just not quite there as much as Paramore for me, but it's very close. And it is very different. It's got a lot of 80s influence. You can hear that in Hard Times and Rose Colored Boy. And the difference between Paramore and After Laughter is that there's certain tracks on the self-titled album that stand out, and you're like, these are amazing. While After Laughter is consistently really good, there's no tracks that are like, oh, when I hear that, I'm like, oh my god, like, this is the best kind of Paramore. Why, there is some wonderful songs. Rose Colored Boy and Fake Happy, 26 is heart-wrenching, and Idol Worship is brilliant, but there's nothing that's like, oh man, like, it doesn't, I don't know, there's just something not quite there on the comparison scale to Paramore, but still just a wonderful album. And I just really love Paramore. I personally know that some people kind of jumped off the ship and a lot of people fell out of Paramore coming from that kind of era of music around my age, and they didn't evolve. I evolved with Paramore. That's the connection I have with Paramore. Is I feel like I've grown up as they've grown up, and their music has grown up, because musically they understand more. They have more experience. I feel like they're very mature in their music. Even with Hayley Williams' recent solo album, Petals for Armor, I mentioned it last week on this show, but she's matured in the way that she writes and the way that she sings, and even plays. She plays keys, and she also plays some guitar. So even from After Laughter to Petals for Armor, I mean, she's evolved. But Paramore as a band, I know a lot of people think Paramore and they just go Hayley Williams. I think of Paramore the band, although I love Hayley to bits, and I think Petals for Armor was wonderful. I'm personally cannot wait. They've all said they're going to do another record. I feel like they're going to pump out a few more before it's all said and done. And, you know, them live, by the way, I've been to 3 Paramore shows and they've all been fantastic. They've all been different every time, which is good, because some bands just rest and they're like, cool, we're going to do the same show with just playing new songs. And Paramore have changed it up every time. I can't speak highly enough. They're my favorite for a reason, or one of my favorites, along with Hands Like Houses, for a reason, because they're just, lyrically, they speak to me. That, again, being around and growing up with them, it's weird. Music can touch people, I feel, and music can grab at you in every kind of way. And not, I'm a believer in that music and songs mean something different to everybody. You can kind of relate in your own way. And while I'm sure Hayley and whoever co-writes with her has a specific thing of like, this means this is where I'm drawing inspiration from, it doesn't matter to me. I take my own experiences and my own personal feelings and match the lyrics and the feeling of the song to me. And Paramore does that really well. And I just love them so much. I don't think there'll ever be a stage where I don't love Paramore. So yeah, I just wanted to get on here and talk about Paramore for a little while. I hope everyone is doing very well. If you're listening this long and you're here at the end, go and listen to some Paramore. They are fantastic. Are they for everybody? Nothing is. But they're for me. And this is the Josh Robinson Show, and I want to share snippets of my life and my likes and my interests to you. So if I can recommend anything this week, it's go and listen to some Paramore. Specifically, their last 2 albums, because they're fantastic. But any Paramore is wonderful to me, and you're going to hear me talk about Paramore for as long as I have a podcast, because I love them so much. Hands Like Houses, don't worry, there's an episode coming on them as well, because, oh man, I have a lot of feelings on them, and I'm just very grateful that I found their music. I'm a big believer in finding music in the sense of it can help you, because everybody has their days, and I've been pretty vocal about the fact that even I struggle, and I have struggled in the past, especially as a teenager. And I think music is very healing. Music is very real. And I don't think there's ever a time when music won't be that for me. So go and listen to some music. Go and listen to specifically some Paramore. Get them in your ears. And yeah, that's all I'm going to do for this week. Again, like a 20-minute episode, but that's what you kind of come to expect when I do a solo show. Just a little pocket-sized podcast for you. I've said that all along, that it is the pocket-sized podcast. Please continue to rate this podcast 5 stars on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, whatever you want to call it. Follow along, like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Over on Twitter, at time of recording, I am 78 followers away from 4K followers on Twitter. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a giveaway. You'll see more on Twitter as I get closer. So spread some love for me on Twitter. It's an accomplishment. I don't know, to stroke my own ego? Maybe. But it's an accomplishment nonetheless, and I'm excited to get there. As more things are in the works for me. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you go and listen to some Paramore. And I will see you tomorrow, virtually of course, for some Brothers by Law. We're going to talk about the PlayStation 5, so get ready for that. And on Friday on Wrestling Reverb, me and Kevin are going to talk about our dream matches in our dream stipulations, our dream events, our dream locations, everything like that. And yes, I will be addressing what happened on Raw with my lovely Iconics. It's going to be a ride. See ya for the rest of the week. Have a lovely day. Goodbye.